What is the best way to get a lot of people very full on a very small budget? Hello, lovely humans. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jamie Wolfer. I'm your online wedding planner, and today's video is going to be an excerpt of one of the live monthly calls I do with my clients over in the Master Plan. What is the Master Plan? Well, I'm so glad you asked. It's a program that I run where I help people plan their weddings online, where I can give them feedback and advice in real time, and then I have this whole thing that I work them through that is astronomically cheaper than the cost of a real life wedding planner. How do I know that? Because I'm a real life wedding planner. Okay, so I know all the tips and I know all the tricks and I know all the hacks, but I made it super, super cheap to help you plan online. So first and foremost, jump on down there and hit that subscribe button, okay? I want you to hang out. I want you to plan your wedding as easily as possible because you deserve to plan easy and stress less. Get down there, hit subscribe, hang out. Let's keep doing these videos together. And if you are interested in joining the Master Plan, as you're watching this video, my next live call is tomorrow night. I would love to see you there. So without further ado, let's just jump right on into it. Here's how the calls typically will go. Obviously, y'all submitted some questions, and there are like a ton of questions that you submitted tonight. So I want to make sure I get through these initial announcements pretty quickly so we can get right to the meat and potatoes of this chat for today. But you might have some like follow-up questions based on the questions I'm already answering. Use the heck out of that chat box, all right? Because we've got another person on the team. We've got Rebecca here from Wolfer & Company to answer any questions. She's also our in-house florist that we refer to all the time. So if you would like to use her for any sort of floral questions, she's here for that as well. Okay, so the main topic for today is going to be kind of like catering, food, dessert bar, etc. But of course, we will branch out and do a bunch of other questions if we need to. And it looks like a lot of them are, wow, you guys did send a lot of questions. That's okay. I love it. We're going to be action-packed tonight, but it looks like a lot of them fall under that general theming. Are there any strategies/tips to help keep the catering bill reasonable when having a large guest count? Our estimated number is 300. Just seems like everywhere we look, we are spending around $6,000 on food alone. Okay, I can't math that. How much is that per person? Nobody answer that, okay? Pretend like you can't math that in your head either. That's $20 per person. That's not bad. Okay, so my suggestion here is if $20 per person is too much for your overall catering bill, then you need to get a lot more creative. All right. So I would recommend getting very creative with your appetizers, keeping it simple, but DIYing it. Maybe getting creative with your desserts, having a family member or friend set up a dessert table for you. And then when it comes to the actual food itself, you really need to cut down on the options and see if you can get something grain or rice based. Pasta, fantastic. Beans and rice to go with Mexican food. Like it's a very cheap filler, right? So people are still very full and you minimize the amount of protein that you use. And I'm a protein loving girly. Like I will take steak and potatoes all day. But if we are at this point financially where we're trying to make sure that we have less than $20 per person, then we want to make sure we are getting people full on salad bars, on different kinds of pastas, etc. But that will mean that you will need to get a little bit creative when it comes to the actual catering. I would suggest doing a drop caterer in this type of situation, which means like, dude, call Chick-fil-A. Like have Chick-fil-A cater your event. And then if you want to, you can hire someone from TaskRabbit to go pick it up for you and bring it to your event. And then you will just need to either have volunteers set it up or hire someone to do that setup for you. But there's ways that we can get creative with this. But with this price point of not wanting to go over $20 per person, you're probably not gonna be able to go with traditional style catering. I would like to avoid having any excess of leftover food, cake, favors, etc. if possible, mainly for the sake of money. How can I best help to avoid waste? So I love this mentality, right? Because we don't want to be like buying food that's not going to be used. The very best thing that you can start with is buy food people are going to eat. So I would recommend staying away from a giant cake because as much hate as I get on the internet for this, we see so much cake thrown away. So much cake thrown away. So instead, I would opt for like a dessert bar, right? I would offer something that gives you a couple of options or gives your guests a couple of options for things that they're actually going to eat. Okay. Secondary to that, I would go with as much professional insight as possible when it comes to what you are ordering. Do not fly off the seat of your pants on this one because you don't know. Right? So if there is any way that you could speak with maybe potentially a professional in this field, even if you're not working with a caterer, or if you are, let them know that this is your intention. Let them know that you'd be like, hey, it's super important to me to make sure that we have not a lot of food waste, right? And then last for that, because I wouldn't be able to tell you like how much you should be ordering per person, how much per pound, how much per person, you know, et cetera, because I'm not quite sure what you're serving. And last beyond that is have a plan for when you do have leftovers, or if you do have leftovers, bring containers. I cannot tell you the amount of times that we've had leftover cake, again, because people don't eat the cake, and have to like scrounge around for some sort of moving box or something to put the cake into for the couple to take, or for the parents to take, or someone to take home, you know, not leave the cake there, but there aren't vessels to take those leftovers. So if your caterer offers that, take them up on it. If they don't, bring your own, and let whomever is running your day know that you'd like this, or a family member or friend, like, hey, we want to get our money's worth out of this food. We want to make sure that we're not being wasteful with this. And then as far as favors, a lot of people won't take them. So maybe just skip them if you're really worried about them not being used. And then drinks, purchase your drinks and or alcohol from a place that will take returns for any unused drinks, or unopened drinks, I should say. How should we communicate / announce that there is a cash bar instead of an open bar, but not come off as looking cheap? Okay, well, first of all, cash bars are super cultural. And that is something that I had to learn the hard way when I when I first got started, because I was like, nowhere. I think I've been to one wedding in my life before wedding planning where it was a cash bar. And I was like, that's so weird. That is so weird. But also, it's not like I was going to a lot of weddings before I was wedding planning. So that point is a little moot. So I guess it all depends on how you deliver the information, right? Because your intent is not to come off as looking too cheap, but maybe your intent is to focus on spending money on other things, or making sure you have really bomb food. So personally, I would probably Google some sort of funny phrasing to use. That's what I would want to do. Beer and wine are on us, but if you want to get crazy, cash bar is available for anything above that. Not that exact phrasing, but something along those lines. And I would include that definitely on your website and include it in some form on the invitation. This may not mesh up etiquette wise. Like, I don't know if that's necessarily appropriate, right? No, I've definitely seen this on an invitation. What am I talking about? But maybe there's like a little information card that you can add into that, because I agree, you don't want to come across as looking too cheap. But also, I am 100% down, now that I've been doing this for a lot of years. We're not saying how many years, just a few. It's fine. That it makes sense. Cash bars make sense for so many people and so many financial situations. So I'd make it funny. I'd make it lighthearted. Beer and wine are on us, but if you want to get bougie with it, cash bar will be made available to you. What is the best dinner option if your venue doesn't have a full catering kitchen? Trying to avoid a buffet. Okay, so there is probably not going to be a best dinner option. Okay. Best dinner option if you don't have a full service catering kitchen. Trying to avoid buffet. So you want to do plated, or you want to do family style, and you're trying to figure out what's best to serve in those situations? But let me know a little bit more structure to this question. Are you trying to figure out what type of food, or how to serve it? Because if, based on what I'm understanding here, if they don't have a full service catering kitchen, I would either simplify or outsource the kitchen. Okay, so that means we're going back to drop catering, or we're going to food trucks so they can cook outside, right, and bring it in. Something that simplifies not using the actual kitchen space. So those would be my top 2 recommendations. Catering that's brought there, already cooked, already prepared, or a kitchen that is outside the full service catering. As far as trying to avoid a buffet, it gets a little bit complicated when you're not working with a full service caterer in a situation like this. So if you could potentially bring in a catering team, that's super feasible. It does add obviously an extra expense, but servers are typically, and this can change based on your location, inflation, etc. Servers are typically about $35 per hour, and then they have like a 4 or 6 hour minimum. You could hire several servers, but getting plated meals gets it a lot more complicated than that. Some full service caterers I've talked to bring their own truck to cook from and work out of that. They don't care. Yeah, they didn't care what the venue had, similar cost to others. That would be a fantastic option in a situation like this. What we do run into sometimes, and that seems like not super, super common, but I'm glad that people are picking up on this, and I'm glad that caterers are picking up on this, or they can do a full kitchen build out. So Madeline, hopefully I answered your question with that. But if you need more specificity, please feel free to let me know. Okay, I've been looking at bartending services, and I'm not liking the fact that we have to choose from the company selection. My fiance likes a very certain type of beer that is not from the US. I've seen none of these companies offer this type of beer. We were doing beer and wine only. Okay, so it's super important. We really want to make sure we have this. But I was thinking, what if we just buy the alcohol ourselves and hire a server who is of age to pour the drinks? Do you have any other suggestions? Also, any ideas where we can find a server in St. Louis, Missouri? I'm sure I could ask some of my friends and find someone. Also contacted the venue, and they don't care about what type of bartending services we have. They even said we could do self-serve. Oh, cool. So you've got tons of options here. I was thinking this might be a good idea. However, we have some teenagers coming to the wedding. Not that I don't trust them, but I feel like better to be safe than sorry. Also, I asked about liquor liability insurance, and they said they don't require it. Okay. You have asked all the right questions, Emily. Look at you. Just boss moding it up right now. The same types of companies that offer servers will just offer one-off bartenders. So you do not need to hire a bartending company to come do some sort of elaborate thing. You can just hire someone who does the service. So that sounds like it'd be the best situation for you in this kind of setting. I honestly would go to a Facebook group and ask if anyone knows of a local bartending company that just offers bartending services that doesn't come with a bar. The benefit of doing that is you can get a bartender that comes with some of the supplies. So it's not just finding someone that's of age, it's hopefully finding someone, you know, that has bottle openers, something to clean up the bar if something spills, someone who knows how much wine to pour. I will never stop telling this story, but we had a server, she was actually a server, be our bartender at our wedding. She was not a bartender. And so she did extremely heavy pours on wine. So much so that we basically, towards the end of the night, were like practically out of wine. So we want someone a little bit more than just like, hey, you're older and enough to drink. Can you pour this stuff? We want to be a little bit more intentional with it so we don't run out. So to kind of like wrap all that up into a neat, pretty little package, I would recommend going to a Facebook group, asking if there are bartenders in the area, or maybe there's a bartender in the group that you could speak with that could come with a licensed bartender who knows how much to pour, and ideally any sort of tools that you might need for this. And then, yes, you can buy your own alcohol. Some of them will even provide you with a shopping list. So it's very feasible. I would still personally, if I was your wedding planner, which basically, I mean, come on, let's be honest, I kind of am. I would make sure that the bartending service still comes with liquor liability insurance as a just in case, you know, in case people be wildin'. You know, I love to bake and I'm planning on making the desserts myself. We are having around 60 people. I'm thinking maybe a smaller 2-layered cake and then having a bunch of smaller desserts and also supplementing with some cookies or macarons from Costco just to make sure there's enough for everyone. My future mother-in-law said I could use her freezer to keep the cake in, and also a bunch of girlfriends, sisters, and future mother-in-law have offered to help make desserts. So it would be a fun girls' day making cake. I was planning on doing it maybe a month before the wedding and then freezing all of the desserts. And then my future mother-in-law said that she would bring all the desserts to the reception. The reception has a fridge that we would have access to, keeping everything cool because the reception is an indoor/outdoor thing. Do you have any advice/thoughts on this? So my first concern was keeping it cold enough, which a lot of, you know, just hobby bakers don't necessarily consider that. You've already outlined that perfectly. So I'm already like, you've got this. That sounds fantastic. Yes, we need a fridge space. Yes, it probably needs to be frozen beforehand. So the buttercream that is mostly made of butter, as you know, does not melt. I mean, reading this, you might have too many desserts. I don't even think you would need to do maybe some of the stuff from Costco. My cousin / one of my best friends in the world is a professional dessert table baker for weddings. Like she dove into that niche and she like buried herself in it. She's like, this is what I do. She likes to have 3 to 5 different types of dessert and then enough for like 3. She does minis, by the way, which is highly, highly, highly recommended because then everyone can kind of get a sample of everything instead of picking up one cookie, taking 2 bites out of it, seeing something else that they want, and then going back for something. And then you have a bunch of half-eaten desserts. So she finds that when she does dessert tables, going smaller with the portion size is super, super smart because then people get to sample more and you don't see like half-eaten cupcakes all over the place. And then she typically recommends having 3 to 5 pieces per person of the mini pieces. So I recommend, if you can, going bite size if possible or smaller, you know, like single little itty bitty servings so people can sample things. In addition to your cake, maybe have 3, 4 different types of dessert and then enough for everyone to have if you're doing small bites. 3 to 5. I maybe pick a number like 3 or 4.
All right.
Does that help?
Yes, it does. Yeah, I was thinking about 3, and then it was more the Costco idea was just more if I get too stressed out, then we have an extra avenue to do just in case I get it in over my head.
Absolutely. We love that as a fallback option. That's very smart. I'm glad you're doing that because that's obviously the concern. And I would also test these desserts and make sure they freeze well as a just in case. So do a dry run early on, freeze them for the same amount of time you anticipate them need to be. That's if you have enough time to pull this off. And then take it out and see if you like the results, see if you're okay with it. Now, cake obviously freezes beautifully. It sounds to me like you have some experience with this, but test out the other desserts just in case.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. What are the do's and don'ts for potluck style supper? We will be providing the meat, pork, and chicken, but I need pointers on starting to organize for 280 people. Our wedding is August 2025. So full disclosure, have never done potluck style supper for especially nigh on 300 people. Okay. So I can kind of give you, you know, my best advice based on the fact that I've had potluck meals with other people before as like on a small scale thing. First and foremost, you need to be organized as heck. Secondly, you need to be very specific on what you want people to bring. So for me, how I would organize this is like maybe you have X amount of people bring potatoes, whatever style of potatoes they want to do, right? And then X amount of people bring salads. Now, it just depends on how specific you want to be. If you want to be like, all right, I'm going to ask these 5 families to bring garlic mashed potatoes, or just bring potatoes in general. I'm going to ask these set of families to bring things for a salad. Fantastic. These families can bring bread. I would get a little specific like that. So it's not just like everyone bring whatever you want, right? Secondly, you need to be very specific on what people need to be bringing. What are they serving it in? How are they serving it, right? Does everyone need to bring their own spoons or forks or tongs? Are you providing those? Because we don't want people like, especially if there's any sort of food sensitivities, we don't want any sort of cross-contamination with spoons, even though people might do it anyways. It's really hard to manage in a situation like this. So give groups of people types of things that you want them to bring, give them direction, tell them what they need to be serving them in. Are we talking about like 50 different crock pots? Do we have a power source for all of those? Or do they need to come self-contained, ready to go? And then you need to tell the people how many they need to be preparing this for. So like you need to bring salad enough for 10 people. I don't know. That's where you're going to kind of have to sit down and get this organization going. I highly recommend a spreadsheet, because that's obviously, if you've seen the spreadsheet, the master plan, you know that's where my heart goes. I love a good spreadsheet. But that way you can add up the amount of servings that you're having people bring and can kind of stay a little bit more focused. The reason I like being a lot more specific with it is because, you know, my thoughts are like, what if someone creates like one really bomb type of a side that's super different, and then that's gone, and the other things really aren't eaten? If you can kind of strategize a little bit and give a little bit of theming to what you're asking people to make, that could help. That's a really good point. A shared Google Sheet is so helpful for potluck style meals. You can share editor access so everyone can note down what they're going to bring, and you could have deadlines, set up the sheet, etc. Yes. Also, you're going to have to probably anticipate some people not following through. That would be my concern, or an additional concern, just to kind of, and again, I want you to think through all of this before we even get there. So it's just like, once we get there, it's a no-brainer. So have some backup options. Okay. Hannah asked, do we need to serve food during mocktail hour? We have a full dinner at 6:30 or 7. The cocktail hour is not expected in our area. We do want to have some drinks set out, and we would like to set out s'mores ingredients. Is this enough? It depends. Most people come expecting to eat during cocktail hour. So I would say, honestly, yes. Unless you are like, hey, we like don't really ever have appetizers at cocktail hour or mocktail hour in our area, or it's going to be really short, most people will show up expecting to eat during cocktail hour. You can keep it super simple. One of my favorite ideas of all time, and I will always talk about this, is a nacho bar. And we're talking like the super synthetic cheese, you know, like liquid Velveeta, and like toppings that people could put on there, because then it's one crock pot with a ladle in it, chips, and then just toppings that people could have. So it's really easy, it's interactive, it gives them something to do with their hands, and gives them something to eat. So I like the idea of s'mores, yes, but if you have anyone in your life that doesn't really like sweets, then they're not really going to be satiated during this time. Etiquette-wise, people will expect food. I recommend adding something, popcorn bar, chips and salsa bar, something, to tide people over, especially because cocktail hours can be a little bit long without any food. We are having a buffet style dinner for a small 25-person reception. We are also having a dessert table with 6 different desserts that we're bringing in. Should the venue staff be setting out the desserts after dinner, or do I need to find someone to do that? I would ask the venue staff first and see if that's something they would do, because it all depends on whether or not they have their food handlers certification, and if that's something they're even willing to do. So personally, I would ask them first. I would ask them to be like, hey, would you be willing to set this up for us? And you're probably going to want to have that set up maybe even before dinner starts. So that way we're not seeing the chaos of setup happening. Most dessert tables are preset before the reception begins. And if then the venue says, no, we don't do that, or we're not offering that, yes, then I would find someone else to do that for you. It could be a family member, it could be a friend, it could be a volunteer, it could be someone who's attending the event. In fact, it would make most sense for someone who's attending the event. And they, again, would set it up beforehand. The only reason I would ever suggest setting something out after dinner is extreme temperatures and lots of bugs. So if for any reason you're like, like it's going to melt, well, we literally cannot, then yes, it should be probably set out ideally during dinner if a professional is doing it, but it could be done afterwards if we need to. It's really not that big of a deal, but we like to have it preset if at all possible. So that way the venue staff can focus on your dinner, and that way if you're having a volunteer do it, they can focus on just being present and not having to race off and go set something up. If I'm doing family style dinner, how long should the catering staff leave the bowls of food on the table before they clear them away? They should know the answer to this. For sure. Not me, because I don't necessarily have a time frame for you unless, Zill, are they non-professionals doing this? Because if that's the case, I would say I've never really paid attention to the time that they clear this. Here's where my mind goes. I would have the caterers, if possible, or the servers, I'm sorry, remove the bowls, the plates, the platters, whatever, from the table and set them, combine them and set them off to the side as like a little mini buffet if anyone wants to go back for it. Because the idea of family style is that like you could, you have all this food to eat from, and a guest might think, oh, I'll just come back and eat it later because I really want to go on the dance floor and then I'll come back for snackies later or whatever. So I would think that combining them, setting off to the side at a mini buffet style table will help if there's any leftovers and people kind of want to keep snacking or eating a little bit. But general busing typically happens once dancing begins, and it happens at tables where people are not seated first. Okay. Follow-up question regarding dessert table. In watching your YouTube video, is chocolate, fruit, and some other kind of dessert? Yes, that generally is ideal. I personally don't necessarily, I'm not a huge dessert person, and it's not at all like a health thing. I don't care. I'm not afraid of sugar. Unpopular opinion, right? But I probably would be the person that would opt for like, a fruit tart or something with lemon in it that has brightness and vibrance. Those are the kind of desserts that I would gravitate to. So you kind of want to have a little bit of variety there. Yeah, Amy typically recommends at least one bit of chocolate, something chocolate based, chocolate chip cookie, etc., brownie, what have you, something fruity. And then any other kind of desserts you kind of just want to fill in here, because that way you will please as many palates as possible. So that's what we have for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you'd like to join the master plan, I will leave that linked in the description box down below, and I hope to see you tomorrow night. And until next week, bye guys.